With the Double-A Somerset Patriots, Steven Cusumano joined alongside Yankees right-handed pitching prospect Cam Schlittler. And Cam, first and foremost, thank you so much for the time. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, it's been really fun to watch you pitch to start this year, but obviously your year started in Major League spring training. Want to start there with you. What was that experience like, getting to rub shoulders with all those guys in the big league clubhouse?
Yeah, it was great. Obviously, it was good to, get that invite and, go over there and be able to experience, some things. So it was good. Again, like taking in what you learn over there and kind of the big league side of it. There's a lot to learn and, a lot I need to kind of figure out, from that perspective. So, again, really good opportunity, and I was able to take a lot in before the season started.
Now, when I spoke with you at spring training, you mentioned that you were working on a new pitch, a splitter with Mike Glavin Jr. We haven't seen that a lot this year, but I saw you throwing a cutter. I know you're tinkering with a lot of the arsenal. At this point, as it stands right now, what does that kind of look like for you? How would you kind of assess how you would scout yourself?
For sure. Again, I came into the year trying to work on some things. For now, I think we're going to drop the splitter, drop the gyro. Again, I was throwing a cutter yesterday, I learned that about 2 days ago. So, that was a thing for me to kind of go into yesterday and kind of, see what the results were. And, with not that much time throwing it. So, luckily it went well. So I think kind of what they're thinking, what I'm thinking, I think that's a good fit for me. And just kind of adding the cutter to the, four-seam slider curveball mix is definitely going to help me be more successful. Yeah, obviously Sam Breen's here for the week, so that definitely helps. But, we talked to the analytical guys, and, that was the suggestions they made. So, 2 days ago in a bullpen, I just started throwing it. And, again, just you got to get the results, see what the results are on the field. So, again, I'll continue to keep throwing that over the next few weeks and, see how it works.
Now, you told us at the beginning of the year you packed on about 10 pounds of muscle. What was that like during the offseason, just taking on maybe a new diet, new routine, and understanding that was kind of the goal for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of the biggest thing in the offseason is, you're trying to put weight on, and, sometimes as things come up. And, the first two off seasons, I was able to put weight on but wasn't able to keep it on. So, again, the objective for me was going into this off season or last off season trying to, put that weight on and keep it on, which I was able to do. And so I was able to kind of get, above that 218 threshold that, I was kind of stuck at in prior previous years. But, that was something I was, very confident in that was going to help me, better my game and, especially with the velo and the stamina as well. So.
Well, I want to peel it back to your upbringing, too, because you're a Northeastern guy. You're from the New England area in Walpole, Massachusetts. Your dad was a police chief. Your mom worked in the schools. What was that like, just kind of with your upbringing and what the kind of work ethic and character that instilled with you coming up playing baseball?
For sure. Again, Northeast, it's cold, it's gritty. So, that's kind of what I learned playing baseball and other sports growing up. So, Northeastern was close by, and, that's kind of where I wanted to be. And, Glavin, the head coach over there, he's awesome, and, he has a lot of experience. And I only heard good things of him going into, high school and college. So that's kind of where I want to be. And, his thing's all about, hard work, commitment, and, being gritty on the field and off the field. So kind of learning that and taking it up here is, definitely helped me, be a better person and a player and teammate.
Yeah, Mike Glavin, the head coach for Northeastern, and he actually used to play for the Somerset Patriots. We've heard a lot of stories about him and how tough he is to play for sometimes. Yeah. And Matt Hyde has told me it takes a certain kind of person to play for him. You got any fun Glavin stories for us?
Yeah, I mean, he's a tough guy and in the greatest way possible, for me, that constructive criticism is something I kind of lean on to, better myself. And, he's definitely that guy. So, kind of one story that kind of always, reminds me is, freshman year. And, I was doing everything right on the field and, I was meeting his expectations there. But, kind of off the field and in the classroom, I was kind of slacking a little bit and, kind of, not meeting my requirements, what he's looking for as standards. So, we got our first trip in Alabama. I think he found out that Thursday on travel day that I wasn't going to one of my classes or something like that. Didn't say anything all weekend. We got back on Monday, brought me into the office with all the coaches and just kind of ripped me apart for 35 minutes, and kind of the reputation with him. And, grades weren't amazing in high school, but, I worked hard the senior year. But, again, I was trying to live up to his expectations, and I kind of wasn't. So, he kind of ripped me. And then from that point on, I learned my lesson, and then 2 days later, he's like, all right, you're going to throw against the Sox. So it's stuff like that, like he's hard on you, but, he just wants the best for you. And, we have a lot of, mutual respect, and, I still talk to him a lot now and talk to him a lot in the off season about the team and, what he's looking to do. So he's a great guy, and we have a great relationship.
Yeah, you mentioned that spring training exhibition game against the Red Sox. How cool was that as a guy in college not drafted yet?
Yeah, that was great. Obviously, I knew all those names that I was pitching against. I only threw an inning, but that's kind of the tradition is throw a freshman 1-2 innings and kind of see how it goes. So again, it was really fun. I got the results I was looking for, but overall it was a great experience.
Now, I mentioned I spoke with Matt Hyde last year. He told me a story that you took him out to dinner after your first season and wanted to treat him and sort of a thank you for bringing you to the Yankees. How did that all come about, and just how grateful are you to just be in this organization?
Yeah, for sure. Matty's obviously a great dude, and when I was talking to the Yankees, a lot of it was through him, and we had a great connection. And again, Yankees are where I wanted to be, and when it came to the pitching side of things, they were great at what they did. So. And it's a winning organization, and part of that, especially in spring training, talking to dudes from other teams and guys with more experience, sometimes you don't really get that aspect, in other organizations, which is a little crazy, but and they noticed right away, in the Yankees that they want to win, and that's like the mentality they have. So that was definitely one of the biggest things for what I was excited for, coming in. And obviously I don't know anything else from any other orgs, but I hope it stays that way. But there's a lot to learn, and Matty was definitely a great part of that. But yeah, overall, he took us to dinner a few times, and I was like, hey, I'll repay you back. So when I was in Boston in the offseason, I got him a nice meal, and he loves bringing that up. So he definitely deserved it.
Well, take me back to draft day now. 7th round pick, Yankees call you up. What was the whole draft story like? Where were you? Who were you with? And all those great details.
Yeah, honestly, it was a pretty simple story. I mean, I was just kind of hanging out. Got a call in the 5th round from my agent, and they were just like, all right, they're going to take you in the 7th. I was like, all right. Didn't tell my parents really before that. Didn't kind of want to say, hey, I'm going to go here, and then not happen. So I kind of just waited for it to happen. I was actually just hanging out in my room, playing Xbox with my friends, just trying not really to think of it. I had it on, but I wasn't really looking at it. Everyone's really stressed out that day, so I was trying to do what I can to not be so stressed about it. But my agent was really good, made a really easy process for me. So I obviously got that call 2 rounds before, and I was able to happen. I'm very fortunate to be here.
Now, growing up in that area, Red Sox fan, who's your team? Who were your guys?
Yeah, Red
up?
Sox for sure.
Who was your favorite pitcher, favorite players growing up?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was mostly in that Sale era. So when I started to really understand baseball, he was one of the guys that Clay Buchholz as well when I was a little bit younger. So those are some fun dudes to watch. But Ortiz, all the hitters, Manny, he's all great. So obviously growing up, the rivalry was a little bit tougher back then, with the Yankees. So, but again, when it came to baseball and what I want to do with my career, I definitely want to be with the Yankees.
Now, you've had a pretty crazy evolution since you've gotten to the Yankees. You started 2023 in extended spring training. You had the breakout season last year, and now you're on the cusp of AAA at this point. How would you assess just the way that things have gone for you since you made your professional debut to right now in Somerset?
For sure. Again, I think it's kind of the testimony of the hard work and the commitment I put in to better myself and the people around me. So I had a lot to work on when I got drafted, and I was kind of more of a raw player. Obviously, analytically, we're really good at what we do. So I was able to learn a lot, change some mechanical things, and adjust some pitches and maximize the potential there. So again, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and just got to keep performing at the highest level regardless of where I'm at.
And obviously right now with Somerset, you've gotten off to a fantastic start. Are you somebody that sets goals? What are your goals kind of looking forward as we get into May and into the middle parts of the season here?
For sure. Obviously my goals last year were, obviously to, make it to AA, try and be a prospect, kind of more individual goals. As I experienced spring training this year, obviously, again, the mentality is to win games, right? So that's kind of obviously my goal is to help the team. Obviously, whether that's this year, next year, down the road, I just want to be able to be in a position to, help them win games. But, at the same time, I'm working on some things. Command's kind of one of those things as well. So I'm just trying to pound the zone, get ahead, get strikeouts, and, put my team in the position to win games. So, again, regardless of, what level I'm at, hopefully at some point this year that's with the big league club.
Well, Cam, it's been awesome to watch you pitch. It's been great sitting down. We really appreciate the time, and best of luck for the remainder of the year.
Thank you. I appreciate it.